Hoi! Today we're talking about everyone's favorite topic again, damage versus constitution. We're going to look at level 30 specifically, and I'd like to thank Big Bear already for the help with this, helping me get some of this data so that I have this information. Now, the information that we have here is not quite from the live client, basically, from the open beta. This is info from the closed beta, but most of it still applies, and the whole concept of it hasn't changed. So what you can see on this page is just the stats that we used. You don't need to remember any of this. This is just so you have a good idea of the gear that we had. So the heavy build that we had is relatively similar to the level 25 heavy armor that you can get from PvP faction rewards. And then I have a heavy medium build, which was heavy with one piece of medium, which doesn't work anymore. Now you have to build more medium for medium level mobility, and then with a light build. So this, again, is not what you have to remember or have to understand fully. These are just the numbers, the stats, and everything that we tested. Some of this doesn't apply anymore because physical absorption isn't on PvP armor anymore, if I recall correctly. So yeah, slight changes there. But the results are still very relevant because they can tell us a lot. And in order to look at them, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here, I think. I think we're going to go to like 150. Yeah. So this should be easy enough to understand as well, hopefully, once I explain us this. So what we tested, or what we looked into rather, was the data of a level 30 player fighting another level 30 player in various scenarios with heavy armor, light armor, medium armor, strength build, strength and constitution hybrid build, or a full constitution build. All of this, again, you don't need to memorize any of this. These are just all the results of that. So for example, this is how much damage a strength build with heavy armor would do to an enemy with heavy armor. Obviously, the constitution doesn't make a difference for the damage taken, so we can translate that over. And out of that, you get this matrix. And if I was editing this video fully, I would have done a matrix meme for the Matrix 4 coming out. Just imagine that here. Instead, we have these numbers, and these numbers are what's important. And this is the only thing that you really need to fully follow. Maybe we did make this even bigger. So we just begin with this area. Just pay attention to this for now. Everything else we get to afterwards. So in this area, and this up here, the blue area, you can see a few numbers, right? And we have a matchup comparison here, basically. So what you see here is the number of hits that one player would take to kill the other from full health. So, for example, if a player invested into strength and constitution, so that's split, 50-50, then they would take 11.72 hits or 12 hits to kill a player that has invested fully into strength. On the left side, we always have the attacking faction, basically, and here we have the defending one, the health part of the other one. So, on the other hand, if we turn the scenario around, we can look at what a attacking player would do. And H is in this case just heavy. That's why I'm saying we just focus on this for now, because this is all just heavy. So if we look at it the other way around, we could say, okay, we have a heavy armor user with full strength build attacking the hybrid player. And now this number is relevant here, which is 13.71. So they would take 13.71 or 14 hits to kill the hybrid player. What can we learn from that? Well, if you compare the two numbers here, both in orange, we can see that the hybrid player takes less hits to kill the strength player than the strength player does to kill the hybrid player. So this scenario would go in favor of the hybrid build. With constitution, things look a little bit different once again, and we can compare that the same way. So if we have a constitution player against a strength player, that is this red number here, that would be 15 hits to kill them. On the other hand, we can turn the scenario around again. That's the red marked one here. The strength player attacking the constitution player would be 17 hits. So, in this case, the constitution player would win against the strength player, because the strength player takes more hit to kill them. So far, not really surprising. On lower levels, we all had the impression that damage was just outscaling, that the damage was outscaled by constitution. And this is with a great axe. So if you take a weapon that scales even worse with damage, like for example a hatchet, because it only scales 90% with a single damage set, and at this point you don't really have that many points to spend yet, then the gap will get even larger. But the interesting part here is hybrid versus constitution. So if we look at this scenario here, constitution takes 22 hits to kill hybrid, but hybrid only takes 20 hits, or 21 hits rather, to kill constitution. So in this particular scenario, a hybrid build with half split damage and constitution is just a little bit better than a constitution build in this scenario. And that's important, okay? We'll get back to that. And now, this is just the heavy area, right? We also had scenarios here where we, for example, compared how much a hybrid player would do to a heavy player. And so a heavy medium hybrid player that wears mostly heavy armor but a little bit of medium armor and has a hybrid build would take 20 hits to kill a full constitution heavy player, whereas the full constitution heavy player, again blue here, would take 21 hits to kill the heavy medium hybrid. But this might have already shifted now, since the heavy medium hybrid would now have to build a lot more medium armor, so that would swing things a little bit in favor of the heavy constitution user. This makes sense. There is definitely a certain downgrade in that regard that's intentional, because the heavy medium, the hybrid medium user would have a much better dodge, so they can avoid attacks much better and therefore, or much more often, and therefore they would be able to reduce the damage that they take through that. And that's even more intense if you go into light armor, where the difference can be really big. So a light strength user versus a heavy strength user is a pretty big difference. The light strength user takes 8 hits to kill the heavy strength user, but the light strength user dies in 6 hits from the same player. So yeah, the shift is very obvious here between the different weight classes. But I also wanted to see the scenario for heavy medium constitution versus heavy medium hybrid. In that case, again, the heavy medium constitution, now getting like 10% extra damage as well, needs 20 hits, but the heavy medium hybrid player only needs 19 hits to kill the constitution player. So this is for level 30, right? If we're looking at level 10, 20, it might look different again. This is not a fully conclusive answer. But what we can see here is that constitution in these scenarios doesn't always win. It is not always best to just build full constitution. That is the takeaway from that. What that means precisely is yet another conversation, because we have a few asterisks here, I would say. For example, in these scenarios, we didn't reach 100 constitution. We reached 100 strength because the armor had a little more strength, but that doesn't make a difference because we only tried light hits for this data anyways. So that wasn't actually relevant at the end of the day. But for the outcome, you have to consider that if the player was, for example, able to get 100 constitution, they would get a fair bit of extra health, and that could be enough to swing a scenario like this. That could be enough to turn this around the other way. And yeah, it just takes a tiny bit of shifts in one way or another in order to make one better or worse. It's also very important to note that the gear that was used in these calculations was pretty much, well, not 100% ideal, but pretty good. So it was like I said, roughly equal to having full PvP gear, which takes a while to get now, I would say. So if you're in a scenario where your gear is slightly worse, that could also swing things in favor of con, because con doesn't really depend on anything else, whereas damage, or any damage attribute really, kind of depends a little bit on your weapon as well. So yeah, it could skew in both ways again, but I'm pretty sure with certain shift they would go in favor of constitution, like for example if you add in mitigation gems and stuff like that as well. So I wouldn't say that this tells us that we shouldn't build full constitution. I just think that it tells us that full constitution isn't the only way. Now this is specifically for a 1v1 PvP scenario. If we're looking at more, whatever. If you want to tank in early, I would just say go full con. There's no reason not to. If you want to fight in multiple enemies at once, I think it's usually useful to go relatively heavy into con as well, just to have the survivability like that, so that like any tiny mistake goes a little bit less punished. If you're looking to deal a lot of AoE damage in dungeons, for example, as a mage, then obviously you want to go more into damage, then you don't want to go full con. But if your main goal is to 1v1 PvP or 1vx PvP, then I think in many scenarios there is a decent enough reason to go into a lot of con. I would try, if you're building strength specifically, to go into 50 points of strength to just get that extra light damage if you can. Maybe you can get like, whatever, most of it through gear and just have to invest a few points extra into strength. And then that's like not the biggest investment, not the biggest issue. But that depends a lot on your gear and everything. So it could give you an advantage in some situations and sometimes it won't. Whereas Constitution is generally on the safe side. So this is really just more of an in-between overview. I can show you the other stats here as well if you want to see them. Just there's more of a basic idea again of how you can build and how flexible you are in what you build. And the clear message here is definitely that full damage in 1v1 scenarios is usually not the way to go if you want to have leverage over others, but that at least some amount of Constitution should be in there, and how much exactly just depends. So yeah, I think the breaking point will be someplace higher, maybe around level 40, maybe around level 50, where you actually get a more even matchup between the two. But that is something that I don't think we'll be able to test, since the open beta really isn't long enough for that to reach those levels unless you're just excessively grinding. But yeah, that is all in terms of new information on this. I'll be looking into the PvP side of things very soon, into the scaling side of things. And I'd like to thank Big Bear for the help with this. He asked me to do a little bit of a shout out, so I'm just going to read that out right now. So his shout out is for Demise, for his company. Demise is a hardcore EU PvX company striving for world and server first. They currently rank 2 on newworldranks.com, behind Thelin Enor, a company of spear users. I'm just quoting this, by the way. Big Bear QT is an epic New World streamer. You can find him on Twitch at twitch.tv/BigBearQT. He will be streaming right now. He's streaming the beta right now. Link down below as well. He's also a lore master when it comes to New World lore, so check him out on his YouTube channel. He recently did a video on the Roman Legion in Brimstone Sand, so he has a breakdown of quite a few of those, and those will be linked down below as well. And that is all for this one. I will be live streaming after this as well on twitch.tv/GeekSloth. If you have any more questions, as always, feel free to stop by, and hopefully tomorrow we'll be talking about PvP scaling. With that, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you for the next one soon. GeekSloth, out.